Thank you. I see no friends around. What happened to every friend? I see no friendship. When did that came to an end? Nobody says that a friend has got the right to be friend. What has come to of loyalty? What happened to every friend? For years, no gem has been dug from the mine of loyalty. What happened to sunshine, wind, and rain's trend? This was the home of the kings and the land of the kind-hearted. When did kindness end? And since when kings pretend? The ball of compassion and dignity is now on the field. Why is it that in this game, still no players will attend? Thousands of flowers all in full bloom, yet not a song. Venus is not making music anymore. Did all her instruments burn? Nobody has the passion. To whom do the merchants tend? Hafez, no one knows the secrets of the divine. Stay silent. Whom do you ask? Why isn't your turning fate now on the mend? Thank you.
Thank you, Zarina. That was very beautiful. And I want to acknowledge one very particular kind of friendship that brings us together as a community here and around the globe, and that is the intellectual friendship that exists between generations, between students and teachers, between those who support and guide each other as knowers, as seekers. And I want to particularly notice in just one moment, since I don't know that there will be time in the conference for it otherwise, the very special friendship that Hannah Arendt had for one of our most historic and esteemed faculty members here at Bard College. And I might be talking about Heinrich Blücher, but I'm not. I'm talking about Mary McCarthy, who taught in Annandale at 2 different times in her life and was a treasured member of the Languages and Literature Division, where I find my home. And the friendship between these 2 women was one that was deeply personal, intimate, political, intellectual. It spanned every topic and every value that they held dear. And it is that kind of friendship, the friendship that transcends our positions, our nationalities, our identities, our locatedness geographically, and yet honors those things that we are here to celebrate and explore together. What the relationship is between friendship and politics is not obvious. We will be exploring it with the help of many brilliant people over the next few days. And we know that philosophers from Aristotle to G.E. Moore have pondered the question of what is friendship and what is its relationship to political life. Certainly, if politics is the art of the possible in one formulation, friendship, too, is a place where everything is permitted and possible, and yet we are deeply ethically sort of held by the other in conversation and sometimes conflict. We will explore this together, and again, I want to highlight and hold up our commitment, our dual commitment, both to the life of politics and the life of friendship as it shapes an intellectual and an academic community, a community that comprehends all of us and all those who wish to participate in this conversation, both here and around the world. The questions we will be exploring together will be deep and important. And to get us going, it is my honor and my pleasure to introduce my colleague and my friend, Roger Berkowitz, who has, as we all know, been at the helm of the Hannah Arendt Center since its founding, the founding director and academic director of the center. He is professor of political studies, philosophy, and human rights at Bard College, and he will begin us today with thinking about friendship and politics. Thank you and welcome once again.
Thank you, Deirdre. Hannah Arendt had a genius for friendship. That is how Hans Jonas characterized Arendt at the beginning of his eulogy on December 8th, 1875. A eulogy he reprised on this very stage at a memorial service when Arendt's ashes were buried here at Bard College the following May. Arendt, Jonas added, cherished friendship above all. He recalled how they met as the only Jews in a seminar on the New Testament in Marburg and had been friends for over 50 years. In his memoir, he recounts how, unbeknownst to him, she had put him and his family in her will when they had little money. And he spoke of how they both fled Germany and weathered long separations in space and stormy clashes of opinion. The stormy clashes of opinion refer to Jonas's decision to break with Arendt because of her account of Adolf Eichmann in her book, Eichmann in Jerusalem. When Arendt didn't respond to a letter of criticism about her book, Jonas ended communication with Arendt for about 2 years, until his wife, Leora, said to him, "Hans, what are you doing here? It's silly. One does not allow a friendship like yours and Hannah's to end, not even through a profound difference of opinion. After all, it is only a book." Jonas called Arendt, and she immediately invited him over. The controversy over Eichmann in Jerusalem saw many of Arendt's friends forsake her, but she never forsook them. Kurt Blumenfeld, one of her oldest and dearest friends, renounced her to mutual friends even as she flew to Israel to visit him as he lay dying. Harold Rosenberg, the art critic, visited Arendt and rehearsed his arguments against her book that he had published in Commentary magazine. And when he was finished, Arendt simply asked him to pour them a drink so they could relax like good friends. When another friend, Gershom Scholem, also took issue with Arendt's account of Eichmann and accused her of not having sufficient Ahabath Israel, or the love of the Jewish people, she answered, "You are fully right. I have no such love. And this from 2 grounds. First, I have in my life never loved any people or collective, neither the German nor the French nor the American, also not the working class or any other. I love, in fact, only my friends, and am fully incapable of any other love." Friendship was core to Arendt's life and also to her thinking. So if Arendt had a genius for friendship, if she valued friendship above all else, what does she mean by friendship? And more importantly, why is friendship so crucial in our political conversation today? The short answer is this: friendship humanizes the world. It makes the world fit for human habituation. In other words, we cannot be human without friendship. Arendt offers at least 3 characteristics of friendship. First, friendship is a small and intimate world shared by 2 people who talk to each other. Arendt defines friendship as a particular form of intimacy that is between 2, a cutout of the world, she says. In friendship, 2 people talk about how the world appears to them. They share their opinions and their differences, but they also come to discover what they share in common. Over dinner, you and I may talk about Hannah Arendt. On a walk in the woods, we may talk about our joys and our pains, our families and work. Strolling in the park, we may argue about how Israel should respond to bloodthirsty massacres, or how bombing civilians is its own kind of massacre. We listen to each other, suppress our mutual anger, and we talk some more. Friendship, to a large extent, Arendt writes, consists of this kind of talking about something that friends have in common. By talking about what is between them, it becomes ever more common. To say to another how the world seems to me is, Arendt argues, the heart of friendship. It is in talking with our friends about the world as we see it that we make the world as it appears to each of us something human, something we share in common. In talking with friends, we humanize the world that lies between us. In talking with friends, we begin to constitute a little world of its own, which is shared in friendship. Arendt elaborates on this idea in a letter she wrote to Martin Heidegger in 1970 after the death of her husband, life partner, and dearest friend, Heinrich Blücher. Describing her relationship with Blücher, she writes that they shared a little world, what she calls a micro-world that was their homeland. The second aspect of friendship Arendt highlights is that it is distinguished from another form of intimacy, namely love. Love, Arendt writes, is always a lightning strike. It bursts on the scene, lights up the world, and then disappears from public view. The thunderbolt of passion disrupts all human relations and opens up an experience of the absolute, which is not communicable, at least not in language. A true love or a true conviction transports us from the world of plurality and opinion and discourse into the desert of solitude. Friendship, Arendt writes, is not the same as love. In friendship, we share not in otherworldly flight into ecstasy, but reach out across our differences to build a home in the world that lies between us. If love is a lightning bolt that shatters the world space between men, friendship takes time as it builds the human world. She wrote, friendship is essentially dependent upon its duration. A 2-week-old friendship does not exist. That friendship builds over time is why Arendt writes that while she and W.H. Auden were good friends, they could not be real friends. They had known each other only 15 years when he died. But Arendt writes, friendship made as older adults lacks the intimacy of friendships consummated earlier in life. Arendt's third and most radical characteristic of friendship is that it is based in respect. Friendship differs from love not only in its duration, but also in its respect for personal boundaries. Arendt disputes one of the paradigmatic examples of friendship, the comradeship of soldiers. In her introduction to Glenn Gray's The Warriors, Arendt distinguishes friendship from the comradeship of war, the band of brothers. Wartime comradeship is similar to love in that it is ecstatic in nature. In war, she writes, men are literally standing, or rather thrown outside themselves, so much alive that in seeming paradox, death no longer matters to them. Against the ecstasy of wartime comradeship that wants to break down the walls of the self, Arendt sees friendship as an intimacy that seeks to expand these walls and keep them intact. In The Human Condition, Arendt suggests that respect is a kind of friendship without intimacy and without closeness. Friendship is a regard for the person from a distance, which the space of the world puts between us. Friendship is not rooted in affinity or esteem. It is independent of qualities which we may admire or of achievements which we may highly esteem. As respect that becomes intimate, even as it recognizes difference, means that friendship unites people without requiring that they be like us. In this way, friendship is political. It is the basis of all real community thinking, and such a community can only start with friends. We have a bias to think of friendship as based in private intimacy, in which friends open their hearts to each other unmolested by the world and its demands. We thus forget to recognize what Arendt calls the political relevance of friendship. But friendship lies at the very heart of Arendt's political thinking. For Arendt, friendship is the elevation of the politics of humanity over the politics of truth. And I'm just going to repeat that because it's the core of what I want to leave you with today. For Arendt, friendship is the elevation of the politics of humanity over the politics of truth. It is often hard to recall the radicality of Arendt's opposition to the role of truth in politics. Politics, she writes, has come under the sway of truth, at least since Plato, in his Republic, sought to deal with the problem of plurality, of untutored opinions, by training a philosopher king who would govern the people. The philosopher king elevates truth over opinion, and when the hoi polloi don't accept the truth, we can tell them myths and stories to keep them obedient, to organize life in accord with the good. The specifically modern version of Plato's effort to unify the political world is the rule of experts. Putting prejudice and partisanship aside, experts are said to determine the right way to fight a pandemic, halt a warming climate, or address the question of immigration. This approach to politics through an appeal to truth is, for Arendt, deeply anti-political, since it suppresses the reality of plurality, the reality of contrasting opinions, the reality of prejudice, with a claim to single and objective truth. The politics of truth, by fleeing the reality of human plurality, denies the humanity of our world. Against the politics of truth, Arendt offers a politics of friendship. That, she argues, is more adequate to the humanity of human plurality. Friendship unifies a political world by respecting others, allowing them their space to be, to think, and to act differently. Among citizens, the claim that we must be friends does not mean we must agree or we must like each other. It does not mean that we must listen to philosophers, experts, or our betters. It does mean that if and when we disagree, even if I think your ideas are god-awful, we need to talk. We need to face up to the fact of meaningful difference and plurality that are essential parts of the human world. In the conflict between friendship and truth, Arendt follows Lessing, Gottfried Lessing, in choosing friendship over truth. We must, she argues, be ready to sacrifice truth to friendship. You may think abortion is a fundamental to a woman's dignity to control her body and her imagination of herself. She may believe abortion is murder, the elevation of personal convenience over the dignity of human life. You both think you are right, and we fully believe that our position is ethical, reasoned, and true. Yet somehow we must talk to one another and find a way to be friends. It is deeply frustrating to some of us that we cannot pass meaningful gun control in this country. For others, the right to own a gun is fundamental to their sense of identity and personhood. We may not be able to agree fully. We can talk to another, as the members of the U.S. Congress did and finally passed last June bipartisan gun control legislation. It was not what many advocates wanted, but it expands background checks and provides money for states to confiscate guns from people who are deemed dangerous. Aside from the incremental steps to make the world safer, the legislation is an example of the politics of friendship over the politics of truth. These agreements require that both sides abandon our beliefs that we are right and the other is wrong. What friendship in politics requires is that we talk to each other with respect and find ways to come to build a world we both can embrace. Politics is not about truth. It is about building a common world with our friends. But who are our friends? What are the limits of respect? And what are the limits of friendship? The hard question in Arendt's account of political friendship is, who are my friends? Who are the people that amidst our disagreements I can still respect, talk to, and build together a shared world with? Can a liberal be friends with a Trump supporter? Can she be friends with Mitch McConnell? I think the answer has to be yes. Can he be friends with Marjorie Taylor Greene, Laura Boebert? I'm not asking whether we like each other or agree. I'm asking, can we respect each other as citizens with opinions that, as wrong and abhorrent as we may think they are, we believe are part of the human world of plurality that we share? And can we as friends engage in talking with one another in ways that rebuild our shattered world? The great temptation of politics is to flee the reality of a plural world for the relative sanity of truth. It is easy and tempting to think one knows the truth, to think oneself too good to engage with opinions one finds contemptible. It's amazing she wrote this, but she said, how tempting it was simply to ignore the intolerably stupid blabber of the Nazis. How tempting it was. But as tempting as it is to cordon off and cancel or censor opinions we disdain, to hole up in the refuge of one's like-minded compatriots, she writes, the result will always be a loss of humanness along with the forsaking of reality. Does that mean we should be friends with the Nazis? Should Israelis be friends with Hamas? Arendt, in most cases, does not answer this question for us. There is no true answer of who one can befriend. Ruth Bader Ginsburg could befriend Antonin Scalia. Tip O'Neill befriended Ronald Reagan. The point is that friendships can be nurtured when two people decide, for whatever reason, to talk openly with each other. The result of such friendships is unlikely to be that one party is convinced by the other. But it is likely that both persons will, in learning to respect their friend, find commonalities and begin the process of building a common world. Lessing's tolerance for friendship was extensive. He wanted to be the friend of many men, but no man's brother. Arendt, however, has limits, what she calls a merciless limit to reconciliation with those who do evil. She has no problem calling Adolf Eichmann evil, banal, but also evil, and thus no problem in saying he should be executed. Eichmann's crime, what excluded him from the possibility of friendship, was his thoughtlessness and his allowing himself to become an active participant in genocide, the effort to erase Jews, Roma, and others from the face of the earth. Because Eichmann would not share the earth with others, Arendt writes, we must not share it with him. Arendt expresses her preference for friendship over truth in a citation from Cicero, who writes, I prefer before heaven to go astray with Plato rather than to hold true views with his opponents. Given the choice between a so-called truth and following one's friend, the choice is clear. But what does this mean, to prefer to go astray with Plato rather than hold the true views of his opponents? And let me offer a contemporary example. Can an Israeli and a Gazan be friends? Is it even conceivable at this point that Israelis can come to talk to and respect a Gazan who votes for and defends Hamas, a movement that for decades has sought the destruction of Israel and the murder of Jews? Is it at all possible that a Gazan can respect an Israeli who defends the settlements, who insists that Israel is a Jewish state, who supports the rampant destruction of Gaza that will lead to the murder of civilians? Does going astray with one's friends mean that we embrace tribalism? Those who say no, that the Jew and the Arabs are simply human beings, that they should be friends, may feel superior in their universal liberalism. But they are no longer of this world. The liberal must understand that tribalism is still very much part of this world, as much as the liberal might want it to disappear. At the same time, the Jew and the Arab must acknowledge that tribalism leads to disaster. I stand here as a Jew who has deeply tribal feelings for Israel. Tribal prejudices and feelings are real and part of the world. And yet the Jew must hear those who argue that to respond to the massacres simply as a Jew, seeking revenge or security for the Jew, is to deny another part of that reality, that they and their Palestinian neighbors are also human beings, and not simply Jews and Palestinians. Friendship stands for the idea that I can overcome tribalism, reach out to others, and build bridges across differences. Arendt was well aware how difficult such political friendships could be. In 1945, she published Zionism Reconsidered, an essay that criticized Zionism. Her friend, Gershom Scholem, was incensed. He wrote her a long critique of how disappointed he was and asked for her repentance. Arendt saw the letter for what it was, not a conversation amongst friends, but a demand for an apology. She called it a scathing letter. Her response had not the hint of repentance, but responded to his claim of being right with her own. The result, as she writes, was, quote, an orgy of truth-telling. And she ends her letter with a question about whether they can remain friends. She says she would like to remain friends, but she wonders how Scholem will respond. The reason she thinks it will be hard for Scholem to be friends still is that he is a man, and as a man is vulnerable to believing that his truths must be admitted. She hopes, however, that Scholem can follow her example of friendship and not be, quote, a fanatic for truth. More valuable than truth, Arendt writes, are human friendships. Thus, she asks Scholem to follow her example and, quote, know that a human being is far more valuable than his opinions, for the simple reason that humans are de facto much more than what they think or do. For Arendt, this kind of understanding, seeing from the other fellow's point of view, is the political kind of friendship par excellence. Over the next 2 days, we have an amazing group of speakers here. You also have an amazing audience. And it is our pleasure and job to talk to each other honestly, forthrightly, with compassion, to seek to be friends, and to try and build some common world together. I'm thrilled you're here, and I'm very excited that this conference is happening and is getting going. I'd now like to introduce our first panel with our first keynote speaker. So I invite Thomas Chandler Williams and Naomi Way up to the stage. Thank you very much.